This is a case that is very important to raise awareness on in order to help get a conviction, and you'll find out more by the time you get to the end. But please help this case get out there by sharing and liking the video. Okay, so let's get into it. Let me start out by giving you some background on Alyssa Turney. She was born in April of 1984, and she grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. When she was 3 years old, her mom, Barbara, married her stepdad, Michael Turney. 4 or 5 years later, Barbara and Mike had a baby girl together named Sarah. Sarah was the half-sister of Alyssa. And there were also 4 much older brothers in the blended family. Now, sadly, when Alyssa was only 9, her mother Barbara passed away from cancer, and Mike adopted her as his own daughter and raised her. Now, jumping ahead to the year 2001, Alyssa was 17, and Sarah, her half-sister, was 12. Alyssa was a junior in high school, and it was just the 3 of them living together at this point: Alyssa, Sarah, and Mike, the father, because the 4 boys were much older and had moved out a while ago. So, Alyssa was an average student in school. She had a part-time job at Jack in the Box. She liked to hang out at the mall, spend time with her friends. She had a boyfriend. Sometimes she did like to skip school and do a little bit of drinking, but sounds kind of like the typical teenager, right? Although according to Alyssa's father, she was very wild, and she needed a lot of supervision. She had to be closely watched, or she would get herself into a lot of trouble. And he would always tell this to Sarah, the younger sister. He would always tell her, "Your sister is wild." He used to call her a pistol. And Sarah believed it. That's why he was always keeping a close eye on her sister, but not so much on her. She could go out and do whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted, and the father didn't really mind. Okay, now let's move to the day of Alyssa's disappearance. It was May 17th, lunch. When she left the school, she popped her head into her boyfriend's woodshop class, and she told him she was going for lunch with her dad, and she would see him later. She also had plans that night to go to a friend's party for the end of the year. And it was a good time, like if you can think back to the last day of school on any given year, it was kind of a happy day for everyone. So she went out for lunch with her dad, her stepdad, Mike, and they got to arguing a lot because she wanted more freedom from him. He was extremely restrictive of her. There were a lot of rules that she had to follow, and she was sick of it. But he was not willing to be flexible. So around 1 o'clock, he brought her back home. She was still mad. She stormed off to her bedroom, and Mike left to do some errands and to pick up Sarah from school. She was in 7th grade. Now, Sarah was on a field trip, and they got back to school at regular time for pickup, but her dad was not there at 3:30. So, no big deal. She walked home with her friend and hung out there. Her dad picked her up a little before 5, and he told her that he was having trouble getting Alyssa on the phone and asked if she could try calling Alyssa. But she didn't have any luck either. So they got home, it was about 5, and Sarah went straight to Alyssa's bedroom, where she found Alyssa's backpack dumped out on the floor. She saw her cell phone buzzing away on the dresser, and she found a handwritten note which said the following: Dad and Sarah, when you dropped me off at school today, I decided that I really am going to California. Sarah, you said you didn't want me around. Look, you got it. I'm gone. That's why I saved my money. Dad, I took $300 from you, Alyssa. So, Sarah wasn't overly concerned because she just thought that her sister would be home later that night or the next day, because the father didn't seem overly upset. He didn't call the police. He just started calling a few of her friends to see if she was there. The next day, though, he did call the police, and he told them that she had run away, and no official search was started because it was assumed she was a runaway. There was even a note that said so. So that was kind of it. Nothing happened. Just another runaway teenager. But then about a week later, Mike himself reported that he got a phone call at 5 a.m. from Alyssa, and she was screaming and cursing at him and then just hung up. So he called the police, and I'm not really clear, they wouldn't trace it or they couldn't trace it. So he decided to become a detective himself. He started making phone calls to the Center Alyssa's relationship with her father. Now, I said that he was very watchful of her. He always told everyone that she was, such a handful. But he took it to an obsessive point. He would look through all her belongings and her phone. He would watch her wherever she went. He would visit her at her job and sit in the parking lot and take videos of her through the window. He would videotape her at home. He would do it outwardly, like with a camera in his hands. And he would also do it secretly. He had put cameras inside the home, hidden in the vents. One time he had videotaped, well, maybe many times, but one time we know of, he videotaped Alyssa kissing her boyfriend on the couch, and he showed the tape to Sarah. And he said, this is something I have to do to make sure that Alyssa stays safe. She needs me to be taping her all the time. And Sarah was, as she said, brainwashed that this was a true statement, because she was a little kid. What does she know? There were recordings of Alyssa swimming in the pool and her telling her father to stop taping her. There was a recording of her calling him a pervert. Just an obsessive amount of recordings. And oddly enough, Sarah had the exact opposite experience from her father. He gave her more freedom than any kid should have, really. No questions asked kind of thing. You want to do this? Fine. You want to do that? Fine. And there was a bit of sibling rivalry between the two girls. Nothing outrageous, but, they had their fights and they also had their good times, but there was clearly some jealousy between them. Alyssa was jealous that Sarah had so much freedom, and Sarah was jealous that Alyssa got so much attention from the father. Now, according to Alyssa's boyfriend, Alyssa had stated that her father had sexually abused her. Also, a teacher reported that, in retrospect, Alyssa had told her that her father had abused her. The teacher didn't report it at the time. And some friends also came forward to say the same thing. But sadly, nothing was done about it at the time that it was told to them by Alyssa. In 2003, a man found some human bones in a desert in California called Desert Center, California. But when those bones were examined, it was inconclusive as to who they belonged to. In 2006, a man who was in prison in Florida for murder reported that he killed Alyssa. He had met her at a hotel room in Phoenix, and she was a heroin addict, which nobody agrees to, and it seems like it would be pretty obvious if she were a heroin addict, but her friends and family said she was not a heroin decided to start looking into the case a little bit more, and because they hadn't looked into it at all, they assumed that Alyssa had run away. But they started interviewing lots of people. Now, mind you, a lot of time had passed, and it was already 2008 by the time they really got this rolling. So 7 years later, they start interviewing people. And they're getting more and more information, which is not looking so good. They found out about all the people who had heard that she had been sexually abused by her father, or stepfather, that is. They also found out that Mike had this major security system at his home with cameras inside and outside. He had a system to record all the phone conversations, but he had never turned any of this over, and he had originally said that he didn't have the footage from the day she went missing. And he had never agreed to take a polygraph or do an interview for the police. Now, he used to work as a police deputy in the 70s. In the 80s, he worked as an electrician. I'm not sure what he was doing at the time that all this was going on, though. He offered an idea to the police. He said that when he was working as an electrician, he was in a union, and he had complained about the working conditions, and the union was very angry with him. He felt that they had killed Alyssa as revenge and dumped her in Desert Center, California. Interesting. So, the police came to his home to investigate one day, and just so happened he was coming outside to collect his mail, and he was armed with 2 pistols, 7 magazines filled with ammunition, and a knife. So they arrested him, and they searched his home, where they found some very unexpected things, including 19 guns, 26 pipe bombs, a notarized contract signed by Alyssa stating that he had never molested her. Like, he made up a contract, made her sign it, and get it notarized. Side note, he had also made a phone call to Child Protective Services about a year before she went missing, telling them that if they ever get a call saying that he was molesting her, that it wasn't true. Okay, so back to his house. In addition to all of that stuff, they found a 98-page document called Diary of a Madman Martyr, where he discussed a plan to go and destroy the union Sarah. She started to really question what had happened, and originally she believed that her father was innocent, no doubt. But as time went by and she started hearing more and more things, she no longer believed it, and she believed that he was the killer. She had stated she thinks he picked her up from school that day, took her out to the desert to try to abuse her. She fought back and threatened to tell people what he was doing, and he snapped and then buried her in the desert. As far as the note goes, it was definitely written by her. They don't know when she wrote it. They don't know if she was forced to write it. So that still is a question. Well, everything is actually a question. But anyway, when Sarah got it in her head that she needed to get justice for her sister, the police advised her to get it out into the media. So she did that in a big way. In June of 2019, she started a podcast called Voices for Justice. There were 30 episodes about this case. She explored 3,000 pages of documents from the Phoenix Police Department on these podcasts. Then in April of 2020, she started posting on TikTok, and that is where she really took off. She started getting millions of views. And the more it got out there, the more other people wanted justice as well, which I think really helped push the police and the legal system to do something. So in August of 2020, Michael Turney was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. He was 72 at the time. Meanwhile, the body has still not been found. Her podcast continues, but now she has begun exploring other disappearances and murders to try to get help for other victims. Now, as I said in the beginning, getting it out there in the media has been extremely helpful in this case. And now he has not yet gone to court. But I do believe that the more aware everyone is of this case, the more likely he will be found guilty of, he's been charged with second-degree murder. So, you know, it can be difficult. These kinds of cases with no body, it can be difficult to get a conviction, especially since they didn't collect evidence early on. And things like his car, that they could have checked for evidence at the time, he had sold it 1 year after she went missing. So they couldn't even search it. So what do you think? I'll tell you some of my thoughts. Of course, my heart goes out to Alyssa. She had to deal with such a difficult upbringing. her sister, and she's doing a great job. And of course, to the other family members, all of the brothers believe that the father is guilty. I'm not exactly sure how this happened, but I do believe that the stepfather is guilty. Although he is innocent until proven guilty, we have to say that. But it certainly looks like it. And isn't it something how he picked one daughter over the other? And to what extent do we believe that it has to do with the fact that Sarah is his biological daughter and Alyssa is not? Perhaps he almost saw her as a replacement for her mother who had passed away. And as you see that level of paranoia that he had, I mean, that is extremely pathological. Walking out to your mailbox heavily armed is completely sick. Not to say that that is an excuse. Of course, it is absolutely not an excuse. I'm just pointing out the obvious. And his thinking that the union had anything to do with this seems very far-fetched. So I don't think he was completely mentally well, to say the least. But regardless, what he allegedly did, was so horrific. I don't even have words for it. And the fact that he had been a police officer probably helped him to keep out of trouble for all these years. She's been missing for 21 years now. That's a long time. I think